We're live. Hello.
Hello, welcome to the This Is Not Therapy Hour. I am Brandon Testers,
And I'm Margaret Schaus.
and we are licensed therapists. This is not therapy for very, very many reasons, and I'll be on camera in just a moment. Just grabbing my drinks. If I don't put them by me at the beginning, I will not think about getting them later, and then
Got a whole section over here. Snacks, drinks.
Something that you learn as a therapist, but I guess also if you're a therapist that like focuses on certain things in certain ways, it's like, oh, if I'm not careful about making sure that I have food and drink, I'll just go the whole day. I mean, for years I just didn't eat lunch and like barely drank water and stuff.
Yeah.
It took me a while to be like, no, that's important, and I should probably like make it happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are licensed therapists, but this is not therapy. This is just an open conversation. Margaret and I are here chatting with each other and with all of you. We're doing our best to make our guesses about who you are and what you might be interested in and how we're coming across to you and impacting you. Just adjusting the mic a little bit there. For those of you who are willing and able to participate in the chat, we appreciate that because it gives us a lot more information on which to base our guesses about who you are and what you're interested in and how we're coming across to you and impacting you. We work with a private therapy practice called Effective Artistry. Our offices are in Northbrook, Illinois. We do individual, couples, family, and group therapy with individuals in the states of Illinois and Wisconsin. We also work with a few executive functioning coaches who work with people all over the world via the internet.
Did you say the group? You said we do groups?
Yeah.
Okay.
We try to read out the comments that come in because we're streaming on 3 different platforms simultaneously. So you'll only see comments that are put in by people who are on the same platform as you. So if someone on Twitch writes something, we say it out loud so that the people on Facebook, know what we're talking about. And yeah, it's an open conversation. We can go wherever. Don't hesitate or hold back or worry about taking us off topic. It's like any human communication. If I'm paying attention to you, the things you do and say impact what I think and feel and do next, and vice versa. We just go where we go.
I think so. I want to be a part of the introduction.
Oh.
I feel like I need to know. I need to know more.
I think that's usually the things I try and say is like, we're licensed therapists, but this is not therapy. That's kind of the tagline, but I also made that the tagline as well as the title of the stream in order to be as clear as possible with people that this is not therapy, because that was a concern of mine when I first was planning to start doing this. It's like I didn't want people to think this is like you show up and you can do therapy with me.
Oh, gotcha.
And start talking about things that they wouldn't want to be talking about online, or people don't really have clear expectations. What therapy is not clearly defined in the public consciousness.
Yeah.
And so I want to be clear that even though we can talk about things which are related to the way that people think and feel and act and whatever, we can share content that sometimes is shared in therapy. That doesn't make it a therapeutic process.
Right.
In the same way that like you can talk about the body and that doesn't make it that you're a doctor.
Yeah, that's
trying
fair.
to help somebody, So that it's not therapy. Who we are, we work with Effective Artistry, and what we offer and who we can see.
No, I should say I know what you say, but I feel like you say it in such like a, I don't know, a certain flow in a certain way that like I almost want to mimic it.
Oh.
I know it's not good.
I don't think I do it the same way every time. Maybe I do, honestly. If it's true, like I don't have it as a script in my mind. I don't make a conscious intention or.
Well, you've done it for so long. I mean, it does have a rhythm to it, even when you say for many, many reasons. It's like the same sound of it. I don't know.
That one I know what you're talking about for sure. That the tagline I do say in a way of like, I know I've said this a million times before, and if you're here, you've heard me say it before, but I'm saying it again anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, then it all comes in different. I don't think it was you and I that were talking about this, but I was talking with somebody, maybe one of our other staff, about like learning, the process of learning, and like the different kinds of learning, the different ways, the different types of like recall and whatever.
Okay, yeah, that was not us. I'm sure we have, but
and what we're generally taught in like schools and this is not a complaint about schools, especially at first, it has to be this.
Mm-hmm.
What we're generally taught is via this like rote memorization route.
Mm-hmm.
Like legitimately there's not a way to teach somebody that like B sounds like makes the B sound except for just rote memorization. Repeat it over
Right.
and over and over and over and have them practice it over and over and over. There's not like an understanding that you can have of why the B makes the B sound.
Mm-hmm.
But as we get further into like more complex topics, as we get to like fundamental like building blocks, then we can start learning via understanding,
Okay.
which I know we've talked about that like understanding is an illusion and whatever. But what we mean by that is when we're talking about learning by understanding, what we mean is having an ability to utilize the underlying principles, like reference the underlying principles of something.
Can you give me an example?
So like, here's a silly example that used to come up a lot when I was trying to, I think I've mentioned that I did like ACT, SAT tutoring when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the distance formula in geometry, in planar geometry, the formula you use in order to determine the distance between two different points,
Mm-hmm.
which I actually don't remember. I could construct it because that's the point. I could construct it off the top of my head right now, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. And people, they learn that, right? This is the distance formula. Use
Right.
this formula in order to be able to whatever. And it's, I don't want to take the time to get it right, but it's something like x2 minus x1 squared, blah, 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 whatever.
Okay.
What it is you make a right triangle and then you
Okay.
use Pythagorean theorem.
Yeah.
So these two dots are here and you treat the difference in the x as one of the sides because that's easy to determine. And then the differences in the y as one of the sides.
But can't that also be rote memorization?
What do you mean?
I was asking what's an example of
Yes,
learning through understanding versus.
So being able to do that by being like, wait a second, if you don't remember the distance formula, if you can think to, wait, if I just make a triangle here
Mm-hmm.
and I do remember the Pythagorean theorem,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a lot easier to
Mhm.
remember, a squared plus b squared equals c
Mhm.
squared. There's a reason we talk about it so much. It's so like nice and easy and very useful. So if you have that underlying understanding, then you can solve this problem in a new and different way, even if you're not doing it by like, I'm going to apply the exact process that I've learned before.
Okay.
Sometimes we talk about like linear thinking versus creative thinking or
Mhm.
whatever. So that one way to do like an intro is to learn it by rote memorization. You do it the same way every
Mhm.
time. The other is to like have an understanding of what are the things that are important for me to get across, and whichever one comes out at whatever point and how it's said, fine, whatever, as long as I'm getting those points across.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying in these examples that this is a huge meaningful difference in these cases, but it is useful, I think, for people to have a difference in like so much of what we are taught in terms of how to learn something is
Mhm.
based around learning it via rote memorization,
Yeah.
which is great depending on what you're trying to learn. And then learning things in the way that you are able to understand them and solve new problems, be adaptable and flexible is a different process.
We sing better when we stop trying to sound like the artist who made the song popular and sing with our own voice. Brandon speaks with his authentic voice, driven by a desire to simply help whomever is in front of him. Well, actually, Dad.
Yeah, in quotes.
In
He
quotes.
says that I said that a lot, which I'm sure is probably true.
Really?
That's my dad typing that.
Yeah.
Apparently growing up, I would say, well, actually, Dad, and correct him. I maintain that it seems like I said that more than I actually did, but I can't say that for certain. And like, he remembers my childhood better than I remember my childhood. So
Going back real quick to the rope memorization, I don't know, had another light bulb moment for myself because I was very good with that. Like I made flashcards, I memorized it, took the test, and I got straight A's for such a long time. And then I think it's like when I hit my mid-20s and I was like, I felt stupid. Like I don't know anything. And they're like, oh, well, you can say all these things. I'm like, yeah, I can read off a note card and tell you the answer, but I have no idea what I'm saying.
yeah, or how to apply it in a different
Right. I just know
context
the fact.
Right. And again, that I think sometimes it comes across as though we're like knocking that, and it's not. That's sometimes the only option,
Right.
and a lot of the time the best option of how to learn. Like what we're talking about is a linear process. You do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The downside of that is if you're going through that process and for some reason step 3 can't happen or something's
Mhm.
different, you have a really hard time with like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I can just move on to number 4. like I don't know the part that number 3 played and why it had to come. Maybe without 3, I can still just skip it and move on or whatever. But it's much easier to learn those kinds of things, in part because it's much easier to like create. Like I can give you a worksheet that says do this, do this, do
Right.
this, do this. That doesn't require you to have an understanding of anything.
Mm-hmm.
The term for this is operationalize, like operationalization. Turning something into an operation.
Mm-hmm.
Is the exercise that I do with clients sometimes, where take a task and operationalize it. And sometimes, especially early on, I'm trying to teach people, how to go above and beyond on this. And I'll say, write out an operation for this, that if a person who knew nothing about you and knew nothing about the task were to follow it, you could still reasonably expect that they'll do it.
Yeah.
So like I would make them not say, make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It'd be like, go to the closet, get the peanut butter. It is labeled Jif, like.
I do want to say with that is, I'm actually happy you brought that up. That was probably one of the first things that I can recall that I learned from you. Because I would always go to you and be like, because I had a lot of clients, wanting to like make lists and stuff like that. And you would say the same thing, like just start, like they don't know, like someone doesn't know anything that they're saying. And at least the benefit I saw in that was, one, I think a lot of people, including myself, look at simple tasks or other things as like, it's easy. I shouldn't have that much hard of a time. But when you break it down so specifically, they can really see, oh my God, I'm paying a cost for this. I'm paying a cost for this. And like, I don't know, really helping with not putting so much on their plate.
I hadn't thought of that application of it, but I agree. Yeah.
Look at me.
Yeah. This is something that I've used a bunch of with people who are struggling with homework, because that's a task that very commonly gets stated as though it is a simple thing. I just need to do my homework.
Right.
And then I say, okay, well, what does that mean? And like the step-by-step is not there.
Yeah.
Or the first step is like, I need to figure out what my homework is. And maybe it's as specific as like, I need to go on Google Classroom and like look at it for all the different, but by the time you think about that, like by the time you get to the end of like, well, there's the 5 different Google Classrooms. Actually, I don't need to do that one.
Yeah.
And then you're already lost that step.
Yeah. Or just really overwhelmed, honestly.
Right. So much of this stuff, this is one of the problems that the idea of a person being smart or dumb causes, is that like, if there's something which I think of as this should be simple and I don't get it, or I have a problem with it, if I think that a possible explanation for why it's not working for me is that I'm dumb, then what do I do about that?
Right.
There's nothing to do. It's just, I guess I'll get somebody else to help me with it, or not do it at all, or whatever, which happens all the time. But so much of the time, what's actually happening is like, this step-by-step process is very clear, but it's not clear to me. Like, this step is a step I don't understand, or I'm interpreting that word in a different way. I think I've told this story on the stream before, but I use this example that when I was young, I couldn't tie my shoes for what I remember feeling as though was like way longer than the other kids. Like I remember thinking of it as like, everybody else knows how to tie their shoes and I don't know how to tie mine, and feeling bad about it. And of course, my parents and other adults would try and teach me, and I just couldn't get it. And I remember, over time, I would like ask less frequently because I'd be more embarrassed. And I remember, of course, who knows, maybe I'm making this memory up, but I remember talking to my uncle and asking him to show me how to do it again. And he did the same thing that he and my mom and everybody had tried to use to teach me. And it got to the step where he goes, okay, and then you put it through the hole. And that was the part that I always got lost at. And like, because oftentimes I would think, I don't know if you can see, no, like the loop. Yeah. I would think that's what they meant by hole and try and put it there. And that didn't work. And so maybe I tried it the other way, like, but nothing I tried would work. And so finally I was like, okay, but what hole? What do you mean this time? I don't know why this time. And he said, around your thumb. You've got it looped around your thumb, put it through there where your thumb is. Which, like, as soon as that was explained to me, I could tie the shoe. Wow. Because, of course, I'm not, like, biologically incapable of tying a shoe or whatever. Yeah. I was interpreting the word hole. To me, a hole is empty. Right. Like, that's not a hole where my thumb is. There's no hole there. That's where my thumb is.
One story. Okay. I was going to, I don't have shoelaces. I was going to show it. But I had a hard time tying my shoes. I actually wore a lot of Velcro shoes for probably way too long. I was like, all right, I need to figure out how to do this. But it's not but that way that they taught you, like pulling it through like the loop or whatever. I could never like I still haven't tried in a
Yeah, the
while.
bunny
but
rabbit around the tree thing.
yes, but the other way I was able to do, like they just kept
You
teaching.
just like make 2 loops and then
Mhm.
cross them. And pull
yeah,
them
and then
through.
cross them and pull them.
Yeah, I
they
didn't learn
kept-
that way.
You don't see? I don't know the other way. I'm too nervous to try it out. I don't think it'll go well. But
I honestly haven't even tried to teach my children to tie shoes yet. They're not like interested in it.
Miles?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say his name on here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Miles, who's 9 years old, doesn't tie his shoes. He doesn't have to. We get him shoes that.
Velcro?
No, usually
Oh.
these days it's like slip-ons. Like
Oh.
gym shoes, you just kind of slip on and off. Tying shoes is not as big a deal now as it used to be.
Oh, I guess it
And
is.
he's not particularly interested in trying to learn to tie shoes. So when we go and buy shoes, he doesn't want to pick out ones that he'd have to learn how to tie.
There's too many holes. I remember struggling with there being too many holes.
Right. So that's an example I use where it's like there's nothing about the person that makes it so that they are incapable, too dumb, whatever word you want to use of learning how to. It's that something is being miscommunicated. If
Right.
it's a simple process and a person is missing it, there's a miscommunication. So doing this, like whether it's operationalization, like that specific exercise we talked about, or breaking things down and going over it piece by piece, that's useful in identifying like so many problems that people think of as really big problems. Like they are really big problems. They have a huge impact and you've tried a lot to say to change it and it's not working. Once you break it down, it's like, oh, there was one word or one phrase that was being interpreted differently. And just that slight little thing that nobody thought was important or paid attention to throws the whole thing off.
Right. I'm trying to think of an example. I know I have one. Oh, I give a great example. Like when I didn't think of this till now. When I graduated grad school and I had to what was it? What's the thing where you have to send in all of that information to take the test, right?
Oh, to register for the
Oh my
NCE?
gosh. Yes. Yikes. When I had to register for the test and it was a lot, there was a lot of paperwork.
This is like the national, it's the national counselor's exam. So in order to become a licensed counselor, in addition to your internship and your master's program, you have to take and pass this test.
Yes. Thank you for that. And there was a lot of just sending transcripts, getting your internship site to sign off on it, and just a lot of paperwork and a lot of sending it to places. And it was just already overwhelming. Even when I was breaking it down, I was like, I don't even know. And come to find out, and I didn't know this then, there was something that I was like, something is missing and I don't know what it is. And then I found out that it was like probably step 8 out of 12 where I had to send some type of paperwork somewhere and I didn't get the right address or I didn't get the right information. And then I got the right information and then I was just able to go A to Z right away. Like even something as small as that where I'm like, why can't I start the beginning anyways? But it was like, if I already know I'm going to be stuck at step 8, I'm not even going to worry about doing anything else.
Yeah. So we've talked about this framework in the past too, that to solve a problem, there's 2 phases to that. There's ideation and execution. So ideation is getting the idea of what things, if they were done, would solve the problem. And then execution is doing those things. And so it's really important when a person is struggling to, at least as a start, let's identify what part are they stuck on. Are they stuck on the ideation or the execution? Because the strategies that work for the 2 different things are completely different. And a lot of the time people think they're stuck on execution, but it's actually ideation. Especially with executive functioning work and stuff, is people like, I just got to get myself to do it, but they still don't actually know what it is they're supposed to do.
So that's ideation still, right?
That's ideation. Okay. So they think they do. I just got to do my homework. But there's steps in that they're, even if, and this is often the case, even if it is true that as soon as they sit down to go through the execution of finding out what I have to do, like that ideation I have, the idea of how to find out what I have to do, I understand. So that part I just need to execute. But the doing my homework part involves the beyond just step 1 is figure out what I need to do. Well, then there's all this other stuff.
Well, then how do you work on the ideation part? Excuse me, the ideation part.
So when we're talking about, like, we've identified that someone is struggling on the ideation part, that's where we want to talk about, including like very common advice, things like break it down into small pieces. That is not always going to solve the problem, but that's often very helpful advice when it's an ideation issue. But it's often given as advice when it's an execution issue. Like, I know what I'm supposed to do, and people are like, just break it into small chunks, then it'll be easier, and that doesn't do anything for me.
You're right.
Sometimes it does, but generally it does not, because that's advice that's meant for like break it down step by step so you can figure it
I
out.
didn't even, wow, this is helpful. I didn't even think of that, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm sure there were a lot of times where someone knew what they were doing and I was like, let's break it up into chunks, and they're like, that's not working. And now I'm thinking of stuff in my own life where I know what I have to do, and even if someone were to give that to me, I'd be like, yeah, great, I still don't want to do this.
Yeah, and it can still help to break things down into smaller chunks in execution. But if you're going to do it, it's two different versions of breaking it down. One is to like get a clarity and an understanding of the process. The other is like, this is a big task that you're not going to accomplish all at once. So let's make some decisions about which pieces you're going to do at which point and spread those things out.
Right.
And that can help with execution.
If it isn't always the teacher's limit with communication if their learners feel safe enough to ask clarifying questions, like, what do you mean by X?
Yes, well, it's not about the teacher or the learner being limited. It's about, that's the nature of communication, right? That there's nothing unreasonable about me expecting that when I say the word cow, I'm expecting that you're going to think of the thing I think of as cow. That's what the word, when people get into these conversations about like who used the word correctly or incorrectly, or that's what that word means, that's what we're talking about, is like, it's a reasonable expectation that someone would interpret it in this way.
Yeah.
And if you don't, we could, if we wanted to, it's not helpful, but we could say like, well, that's on you. I used it correctly. People have those conversations and it's a waste. It doesn't do anything.
I was gonna say, don't you just get stuck on proving who's right or wrong when you could just be like, they can have two different meanings?
Well, yeah, although sometimes it is actually like a person's interpreting a word in a way that nobody else is. You know, like if I think cow means rocket ship, we're not like, that word means different things to different people, you know?
Yeah.
But it's still not useful to be like, you're the one making the mistake.
Right.
It's just, let's figure out what's going on here. How do we teach clients to ask questions even within their own minds? So, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to answer that. Hold on. I guess something that I think is useful with my clients is I'm always asking questions when I don't know things in the sessions, like in general. I hope that's what you're asking. But like teaching clients or people in my life to ask questions, I try to show that, I guess, by modeling and by asking questions and admitting that I don't know things. So I feel like if I'm like I'm the therapist and I'm also admitting that I don't know things and asking a lot of clarification and stuff, that'll hopefully make them feel more comfortable to do that as well. Yeah,
agreed. Modeling is the first and most important. If you don't model it, then everything else you try is not likely to be very successful.
I also want to say, though, too, forewarning, because I feel like...
Sí, claro means yes, of course in Spanish.
I know what it means. I think I need to start wearing my glasses that I haven't worn in a few years, but now that I'm reading comments. I forgot what I was going to say. I will say, not even just with clients, but just with people in my life, I've been told they get really annoyed now that I ask so many clarifying questions. Because before I just like, yeah, and just pretend I knew everything. But now it's like, I really want to know, like, it comes from a genuine place. Like, I really want to know what they're thinking or what they're meaning. And they'll get so frustrated. They're like, why do you keep asking me this? Why, And I think it's hard to just get through that, because I'm not going to change how I do those things, because I know it's beneficial for me and for other people. But also something that I think clients and other people realize is, even though it's annoying, eventually we get to a point where we can have such a deeper and better understanding of it.
That's great. Welcome to the club.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I blame Brandon for this.
And obviously, like, it's not always worth trying to understand somebody, right? It depends on the relationship and the context and whatever. Like, there are plenty of times where it's like, I don't know exactly what you mean, but I'm not gonna ask about it or talk about it right now. But yeah, when we're talking about working with therapy clients, it's almost always going to be something we do more of, because that's where like understanding what they mean is the whole point of what we're there for.
I think, but getting clients to that place of exasperation can break down resistance, right? And clients should
yes.
Yeah,
so
right?
This is a good example of what I was just talking about, where I know what you mean, or at least I'm confident that I'm understanding what you mean. And the answer to your question is yes. Even though if I was wanting to be like very if it was very important to me to be like, let's get very specific about some of this stuff, which would be for like long-term things, right? I get what you mean right now, but there might be ramifications later
Mhm.
about thinking about it that way. Then we would talk about it differently. I mean, I've experienced that. Like the reason that it annoys people is because they can tell you're coming at it genuinely. If they didn't think
Mhm.
that, if they thought you were actually just trying to be a jerk, because so what's happening is when you ask what they mean,
Mhm.
sometimes they know and they explain it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't know how to answer that question,
Mhm.
and how they respond to that can be different.
Okay.
Where, like, sometimes I don't know, and you ask me that, and I'm like, oh, interesting, huh? I haven't really thought about that, and like it leads me to explore something. Other times you ask me and I don't know, and I'm like, oh, they're calling me out. Like I get embarrassed about like not being able to say
Mhm.
what I meant, and that, like I'm interpreting it almost as though you are saying like, I don't think you're using that word by
Right.
its dictionary definition, which is annoying
But
if I think that's actually what you're trying to do. You're
Right.
actually just trying to like call me out and embarrass
Yeah.
me and whatever. Then I'm like, ugh, like I'm annoyed, but like screw you, man.
Right.
But if I can tell that you actually are genuinely trying to understand me and I want you to understand me and I don't know how to answer that question, then I'm like, why can't you just already know? Like,
Yeah.
I want so badly for you to already understand it. I tried to say it clearly. I can't say it
Mhm.
more clearly than that. And so then now I'm frustrated about like, why are you making this into a whole thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's usually the case that like I do know what you mean, by which it means like I am confident that I know
Mhm.
how to respond to you in a way that
Yeah.
will match what we're trying to accomplish. But sometimes it's worth trying to understand
Mhm.
it in more detail than that.
Well, I think and I agree with that. Like, yeah, some things I can have a good idea, but with very general terms, especially in like my work as a therapist, like anxiety, depression, substance use, like anxiety. I'll thank you for this, Brandon. I don't think I would have like if I had clients because I have anxiety, so I'm always like, oh, I have a pretty good understanding of what anxiety is. I've had it for a while, but I would never think to ask like, okay, you're anxious. Like, what does that mean? What does that feel like? Like, what things are anxiety and what things are not labeled anxiety? Like, really deep into it. Because I remember I would come to you in the early days and be like, this client has anxiety. It's whatever. I don't know what to do. And you're like, well, what do they mean by that? And I'm like, they're anxious. Like, what do you mean? What do I mean? And I've noticed that people have such different ideas of what so many general things are, whether it's anxiety, depression, even like love, success, happiness. Like, it's all so different. And I'm so happy that even though it can get annoying, or even I can get, it's a lot for me sometimes to ask constantly clarifying questions,
Yeah.
but I think it really helped my work because if I didn't do that, I wouldn't know that everyone means such different things by all of it.
That's, I mean, our job, right? Like, and everybody, even people who have different approaches than us, would say that at least part of a therapist's job is to have to understand their clients and what their clients are saying. But that often gets talked about in this metaphorical way, meaning like do analysis and be able to like
Right.
say this is why you are a person who X, Y, or Z, instead of the legitimate like no, understand what they're actually literally saying to you, which can be.
I'm gonna try to read even though I with my glasses problem.
Yeah.
It's definitely easier for me to answer a question like that when it's coming from I'm unclear on how you're using that term. Could you explain further? It can get frustrating when it feels like they're trying to lead you somewhere.
Yeah.
It's fair. You teach economy of words, say what you feel and mean with as few words as possible, but that still leaves room for storytellers to support a question with an allegorical example.
Yeah. There's one more comment.
Oh, okay. Like if they're being like, well, what is love really? How can any of us really define it when I just wanted to convey that I love my cat and want them to be happy?
Yeah. That's funny. Okay. That first comment, that yes, agreed. I know you're agreeing with what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with what you're saying, that like how a person responds to a question about what you mean very much is impacted by their guesses about what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Are you trying to make me seem foolish? Are you trying to understand me? Whatever. Economy of words, meaning like say as few words as possible. The best way I have to say that succinctly is that clarity is the balancing point between precision and brevity. Like,
okay, explain.
Meaning brevity, like brief. The fewer words you say, the more open to interpretation that is. Like,
yeah.
on a day, is 3 words, but like, I don't know what day you're talking about. On Tuesday, March 22nd, 2027 is much more precise, but also takes more words. So you're trying to balance between those two things.
Okay.
You say too little, then it's likely to get interpreted differently. And the danger on that side is that a person is likely to interpret it differently than what you intended while thinking that they've interpreted it accurately, and neither of you finds out that there was a miscommunication.
I'm sorry, is that with more words?
That's with fewer.
Oh, fewer. Okay, I mixed it up. Okay.
Precision on the other side, you say too much, and yeah, like, I don't know what you were saying. You said way too much stuff. It's hard to track all that, whatever.
Yeah, gotcha.
But at least on that side, if I don't understand what you're saying, I know it. I don't walk away when you're using a lot of words and I'm like, I don't understand it. I'm not like, I got it. Now, I might say it or I might not say it, but like, at least there's some awareness there as opposed to. And it really depends on the context, like you're talking about, right? Like, if we're standing in a kitchen and you're like, hey, will you flip that switch? Will you flip on the lights? It's that switch right there from the other side of the room. Like, I'm just going to flip the switch I think you're pointing at.
Right.
I'm not 100% that that's exactly the switch you were pointing at, but like, what's the downside? If I try
the stakes
it,
are
like,
low.
whatever, I put it back down, I try the other one, whatever. But if you've got your hand in the garbage disposal and you're like, hey, will you flip that switch? Then I'm going to be like, wait, which switch exactly?
Right.
It's different. And the stakes is one of the things. Stakes is a very important, like, what are the stakes? Higher stake, it's more important to like, let's spend extra time and resources being very clear. Let's even be overly clear.
Yeah.
There's a famous, I don't know, story, I guess, that when planes were first developed, like first were starting to be used more and more, there were all kinds of accidents all over the place. And at a certain point, they recognized how many of those crashes were due to pilot error.
Okay.
And so this story gets told all the time to like teach certain lessons. So eventually what they decided to implement was just a pre-flight checklist. Because the issue is that all the pilots knew, they had the training and the experience, they knew all the things that you're supposed to check to make sure before you take off. But it doesn't matter how experienced you are, so you're going to miss some stuff, right? Like, you know it, but you don't check every single thing every time. It doesn't occur to you. The pre-flight checklist doesn't have anything on it that the pilots aren't already trained on and don't already know is important, but it's just a visual reminder to make sure that you're checking each one.
Okay.
And so that's an instance in which it's useful, it's valuable.
Wait, did it work?
High. Yeah, the pilot error crashes went way down.
Okay.
Pilot error crashes went way down. And now, because the stakes are high there, you don't have pilots generally that are complaining about having to go through this checklist.
Right.
But if you were to try and say to me, like, I want you to go through this checklist line by line every time you go to use the restroom, I'd be like, no, man, that's annoying. Because using the checklist is extra resources. It's an additional cost to pay. And it's not worth it there. But even if I'm an expert, if I'm a pilot and I'm like, I know how to do this, even if pride gets involved and whatever, if it's like, yeah, but you might die if you don't do this, then it's like, okay, I'll go through the checklist.
Right. That's fair.
Because I'm going to do all those things theoretically anyway. The only thing is that I'm actually checking off each thing that doesn't add very much. And even if it's only a small % chance that it saves my life, like, I'm paying that cost.
I'm not going to lie. I don't know why with this specific story, but I'm very invested in it. I want to look up what were they missing. I'm so curious.
I couldn't tell you. Pre-flight checklists are very detailed and thorough. It's one of those things. It's kind of like, think of it as, when ships used to launch out to sea for long voyages. It's like, once you're out there, there's nothing anybody can do to help you. We can't bring you more stuff. So we're going to be very detailed and thorough. Like if you and I are like, hey, we're going to go up to Wisconsin and hang out at a lake house, we might like go and grab some groceries, but we're not like doing the math on like exactly how many days and exactly how much will we need. Because if we need more, we'll get more when we're up there. But if we're going someplace we're not going to be around a grocery store, then it's like, no, we need to make for sure exactly what we need.
That's true. You just answered my follow-up question with that story. The higher the stakes, the greater the need for precision, right? Yes.
I would say that's generally true. It's not the only variable, but yes, when stakes get higher, that's when it's worth spending more resources. The reason that precision leads to lack of clarity is if I am being very precise, therefore doing, saying and doing a lot to demonstrate it, but you on the receiving end don't have the impression that this is very important information.
Okay.
And so therefore your attentional processes, not that you're intentionally deciding this, but the things that dictate where your attention goes are not giving enough attention to be able to get all the precision. You're just kind of like getting some pieces and gliding over it.
Yeah.
So when you and I both are like, no, this is very important, we're both very invested in it, then more precision is more likely to work because you're going to ask follow-up questions and
Right.
you're paying close attention.
Other variables.
What are other variables? Is that what you're saying? What are some other variables about when it's the first few things that just popped into my mind you could reframe as like
Yes.
Yeah. The first few things that just popped into my mind are things that I immediately could say like, well, actually that's just another way of a different type of stakes. Because we're talking about stakes thus far as in like what is the outcome of this individual circumstance or whatever.
Right.
But one of the things I was going to say is like what is the relationship? Is this somebody that I'm going to be interacting with a lot over the rest of my life, or somebody that I'm talking to one time?
I don't know if this is something. I don't know if you had said this or not. I don't know that the pilot story really got me in there. I spaced out for a second. Doesn't it also matter if whatever the outcome is going to either just harm yourself or other people?
Sure. Stakes.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, we're not going to do anything that we think of as being harmful to both them and us and everybody, right? We're always only doing things. We don't consciously think about this stuff. This is the point of starting with resources are finite and that exercise about until I say what I'm about to say 5 seconds from now. There are processes that dictate where your resources go. If you have determined that something, if your processes have determined that it's not even worth the resources to think about something, then you don't even think about it.
Right.
So there's no need for like a conscious process of determining that like, what do I do when I'm thinking about something that isn't worth thinking about? That happens, but what people mean by that is I'm thinking about something and I cannot identify any reason that it's worth thinking about. And that means that part of the work is to try and identify where is the value here, potentially, right? I love your humor. Fast and silent. So yeah, we're never like consciously attempting to say something that we think is only going to make things worse for everybody. We're always trying to do the minimum necessary.
Okay.
Right? Again, if we're at dinner, I'm like, hey, will you hand me that thing? Like, it's not even worth putting in the effort to like remember what the word is, because you'll just be like, this thing. I'll be yeah, or no, that one.
Right.
Whatever. Where other times it's more worth like, okay, we have to have an exact name for this. That's part of what we're talking about. So recently I was reading this book series about astronauts, and they're constantly talking about and joking and complaining about how everything has a name. There's an acronym for everything on the spaceship. Every bolt is labeled. It's not like these are the 3 bolts that hold this thing in place. It's like that's bolt RC187B and that's bolt RC188B. And it's because like if there's a problem up there, the people who built and designed everything are not up there. And so the people who are there like have obviously some training to be able, but they're not going to know as much as an entire room full of people.
Right.
But it's really important that the people down here and the people up there be able to communicate exactly what bolt we're talking about and not have a miscommunication. I think about that with therapy. That like we do communicate in an annoying level of detail in therapy. It is just not worth communicating to that extent most of the time.
It's not worth it in therapy?
No, in therapy.
Oh, I was like,
but the way in which, well, not always, but generally.
Yeah.
The way in which we communicate in therapy is not worth doing all of the time, even though some of us communicate that way all the time.
I was going to say it's starting to bleed into my personal life.
Because it's not actually true that I do it all the time. It's just that, like I mostly spend time with people where it's worth doing that.
Right.
But like, I don't actually do that when I'm checking out at the convenience store or like when I'm saying hello to one of my kids' friends' parents for a quick minute,
You should and just see how that conversation goes.
Yeah.
I would love that.
I have thoughts about that. Another conversation for another time. So what we're talking about is value. So I guess if we're talking about stakes as in value, then yes, it's all about stakes. Higher value is worth a higher cost. but breaking down the value in different ways. So sometimes, because sometimes stakes gets interpreted as like, if we get it wrong, something bad will happen.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the time it's like, no, if we get it wrong, nothing bad's going to happen. But if we get it right, something really good will happen. And you can
Right.
still call that stakes, but I'm trying to clarify that that's, if you were thinking when I said stakes, it's just like you might die.
Mm-hmm.
That's not all we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so part of that is like investing into a relationship with a human, another person, that we're always, all of us are always doing this like mental calculus without being aware of it, of like, how likely is it that this is a person I'm going to be interacting with a lot in the future? And
Mhm.
therefore, if it takes a half an hour long conversation to just get clarity on what we mean when we say upset,
Yeah.
like that's really not worth doing unless this is a person I'm going to be talking to a lot and interacting with a lot for a long
Right.
time, and the word upset is likely to come up and I care about, you know. So we're looking at the value. The other thing that gets taken into consideration is the cost, meaning like
Mhm.
what can we afford to do? And so there are times where like, yes, the value would be to be as precise as possible. It's not times. It's always this. It would always be as valuable to be as precise as possible, but we have limits. We
Mhm.
can't pay attention to every, we can't take every, when I say every, I mean, you know, like,
Right.
so we're just balancing these two things out. So the higher the value, the more it's worth paying the cost. Sometimes it's worth paying a very high cost, but we can't afford to pay that
Mhm.
cost anyway. And so we still don't do it because we're rushed and we don't know, etc.
That's true. If you get a steak wrong, you could get E. coli. That would be very bad. That sure would. I think you kind of already answered this, but I want to ask for more examples, like in therapy, when it's the best to be annoyingly precise and ask those questions. Besides when it's like something very like simple, like the word every means whatever, like what other examples in therapy, how do I say this? What other examples in therapy with how the cost would be higher than the value of being precise?
So something that we're always taking into account, not just in therapy, but generally, is like, how much will this bother the other person? Not just how much does it cost me, but how much am I asking for them to pay a cost? Like, they'll reach a point where even if I think it would be very helpful and valuable to get more clarity on what you mean,
Mm-hmm.
you've communicated or expressed something to me, or I'm reading you and like, oh, even though it would be valuable, I'm not doing it right now.
Okay.
It's not going to work. It's more likely to just like make things worse.
Sometimes that analysis can be, how will this affect my long-term growth versus the future with the other?
Sure.
Yeah. No, but then you also said that also has to do like with the relationship with the person. Like if I think that this is going to be a very heavy cost to this person, but I think our relationship is strong enough and good that I can afford to pay the cost.
Well, that's the point, is we're
Right.
trying to make it so that we have as much of an opportunity to do that work as possible. But still, in a given day or moment, you know, things are going to change, and there are going to be times where it's not worth it or it doesn't seem worth it. I think sometimes it's helpful to use the metaphor of like being a technician, like a programmer or whatever, right? That like, if you call me and you're like, hey, I'm trying to turn on my computer and it's not turning on, I'm going to say, okay, what have you tried? And you're like, I push the power button. And I might still say, okay, what button are you talking about? And you're like, what are you talking about? It's the power button.
Mm-hmm.
And even, especially if you do know what the power button is and you know what you're talking about, whatever, there's on my end, I know I've talked to a lot of people who said they were pushing the power button. And then later on, when we got some more information, we realized they were pushing a different button
Right.
that they thought was the power button. So it might be annoying for me to say, like, what's the symbol that you see on that button?
Mm-hmm.
It's the power symbol. Okay, what's the power symbol look like to you? And I want it until you're saying, like, it's like a circle with a line through the top or whatever. And I'm like, okay, great. And you're annoyed because it's like, you knew that all along and you were doing the thing that's like easier and quicker. And it would have worked fine in this case. But I have helped a lot of people with this. And I know that a lot of the time people think that they've identified the power. And so is it going to be the problem? Probably not. Most of the time it's not. But if we just skip past it, we might try a lot of other more complicated stuff. And then we'll come back and realize that was the issue.
Yeah.
So we check it. And yeah, you call the technician. They're like, is it plugged in? Is the power on? And it's annoying. But also, like, that solves the problem a good amount of time. And it's a very low cost thing. So let's just do it real quick to get it out of the way.
Right.
So therapy is the same thing, right? and it might start with something like that. But let's say you get through all that, you get through all the obvious stuff, whatever. And then they're like, okay, what operating system are you running? And you're like, it's Windows. And they're like, yeah, but which version of Windows? Do you have the recent update, whatever? And it's like, I don't know that. Like, what? And there can be some annoyance there too. Like, why does that matter? But again, just assume that I've been through this with a bunch of people, and sometimes that matters.
Yeah.
But sometimes, a lot of the time, it's going to be like, I don't know. You know, what coding language is the program written in? It's like, I don't know.
Right.
And that's fine. And if I was just your buddy and you're like, oh, I was playing this game the other day, it was super fun. I'm like, what coding language was it written in? It's like, what does that matter?
Right. I thought you were giving an example in therapy, though.
So, but in therapy,
Oh.
It matters sometimes, right? Because the whole point of therapy is that we're there because the person wants something to be different than it is. And it's not something simple and easy to fix and change and whatever. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So, and because of the nature of what therapy is, it's not about a computer or a technological whatever. It's about the way we think and the way we feel. It is in large part about the language that we use and how we conceptualize and perceive things and whatever. So yeah, a lot of the time, in order to try and make the change that you're wanting to make, we're going to need to identify that there's something you've been saying or doing or thinking that you still think of as like useful and accurate.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is useful and accurate. And it's still this additional piece of like, it is useful and accurate and has this unfortunate consequence. Sometimes that's just like, there's nothing to do about it.
Right.
It's useful and accurate. Sometimes this happens, that sucks.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, we can change it in a way that keeps this, the utility and the accuracy, but makes it so that this part doesn't have to happen.
Right.
But yeah, we have to get into that level of detail. Otherwise, what are we doing?
So many ins and outs of therapy that I'm like, wow, I wish that was something that was talked about more too. Because I feel like I feel like a lot of people, I guess some people in my life think like, oh, like therapy, like that's easy. I could sit and talk to someone. And I'm like, I don't know if it's that simple. It's not that simple, but it's hard to like, what's the word?
You know, it's funny because, yeah, I hear people say that, like, you just sit and talk to people, which is a true, like, that's an accurate description, even though it leaves a lot out. But that's kind of like saying to somebody who does any work on a computer, like, you just sit there and try and make the pixels on the screen look different. Like, you just sit there and hit a bunch of keys. It's like, yeah, true, but we're doing specific things in specific ways for specific outcomes. But the funny thing always to me is like, even without the rest of the complexity, like, try sitting down and talking to somebody for 7 to 8 hours nonstop.
Right.
Like nothing but a 10-minute break between those conversations. And no, all those people are like, that's easy. You would hate it. Like,
absolutely.
It is not easy, even without the specific ways of trying to do it and having even just like talking for 8 hours.
Right.
And like, it's not, people say this about teaching too. Like, oh, it's just teaching, whatever. It's like, okay, go to your work and run through one day of your work where you cannot, under any circumstances, step away from the room that you're in because there's a bunch of kids in there that you can't leave unsupervised, except for a pre-planned like 15 minutes here and then 25 minutes here later. Other than that, like you need to pee, you got to like call somebody to come be in your office while you go pee, you know.
I could never. Not for me.
The amount of time that people at every other job spend like just chatting or checking social media or shopping online. We know this. This isn't speculation. We've done a lot of research about this. It's hours and hours every day on average.
Wasn't it? I remember you had asked me this of like in a given 8-hour work day, how much work do you actually get done? And wasn't it 2?
Different studies give different results, but between 2 and 4, and like kind of averages out around like 2.5 hours of intellectual labor a day. Yeah, in an 8-hour period. Everybody knows that. Like you work in an office, and even if you don't think about this yourself, you still are like, oh, my coworkers are just like shopping online or taking long personal calls or whatever. But everybody does it, except if your job is something like being a teacher or a therapist or a doctor or, you know, like anything where your job involves sitting down directly with the other person in front of you, where you can't just be like, I'm going to zone out for a bit right now.
Right.
Like,
go online shop.
Doesn't work.
Another thing though, and this was one of the morning messages that you had wrote that's still like, do you want to read the comment?
Sure. Yeah. I sometimes want some kind of name tag or something when I go to IT that says, yes, I did turn it off and back on. I cleared cookies and I updated the drivers. Let's move on. There's a funny old XKCD comic where somebody goes through the whole process with tech, and they're like, okay, by the way, here's the secret password for the next time that will get you straight to through all that stuff.
Oh my God.
And they're about to say it, and then the person wakes up and realizes it was a dream. They're like, no. Is it a good practice to preempt annoyances by using an analogy ahead of the questions, or just let the relationship progress until, if and when frustration is expressed? The latter seems more efficient. That isn't really you, me, you. Like, we all are going to do whatever in the moment seems like the most useful way to communicate something. Sometimes that's you start with analogy or metaphor. Sometimes a question. There's not really a way to like have a rule for yourself of it's better to give analogies first or later. Like, you're reading the situation.
No, I want the secret password. Yeah. I did too.
Sorry, what were you saying before?
What was I saying? Oh yeah, one of your morning messages that still stuck with me was when you had kind of described, the schooling for being a therapist, and how, like, just thinking of like oh, I could just sit and talk all day. It's like, it's not like we just sit and talk. Like, there's so much stuff we learn about communication and other people's point of view, and like, what was
theoretically, we don't always necessarily actually learn this stuff in our schooling, but
well, okay, we learn how to communicate, and I think communication it sounds so simple, like, oh, communication, but it is really exhausting, especially when in this job you're trying to weigh the cost of being precise or being more general, and how to ask this, whether to use a metaphor, whether there's a lot going on.
I mean, so literally, in terms of like complexity, like the ratio of complexity and how impactful the thing is to us, there is nothing higher on that than the way that we think, we individual, like what consciousness is and what thinking is and what emotions are. So we could say that like having a full understanding of the nature of the universe is more complex than that. And that would definitely be true because consciousness is something that's contained in the universe. But like understanding what's happening billions of light years away doesn't seem to be as impactful to us as like understanding the way that we think and feel.
Right.
There's something referred to generally as the hard problem of consciousness, which oversimplified, but basically is saying that like it's not even theoretically possible for us to figure out what's going on with consciousness. So everyone knows this. This is why we're talking about it all the time. Like the way I think and the way I feel, the way I perceive things, like it's a big deal. It impacts me a lot, and it impacts the people around me a lot. It does so much. We analyze the psychology of world leaders because how they think and feel impacts the whole world so much. And then to turn around and be like, oh, it's simplistic. It's like that would be like me saying like, planes are simple. You move forward and they fly through the air.
Yeah.
And it's not like that's wrong, but ask me to build a plane and I can't do it.
Right.
I could even talk about Bernoulli's principle and whatever, but no, I can't. I don't know the details of how to do that. But it's also, we're incentivized to think of it that way because it's really scary for everybody to be like, I don't really know what's going on as far as like, I have thoughts. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I don't know what that thought is or why I don't like that thought, but it's happening anyway. Why wouldn't that be happening? That's scary. And then to think like even the experts who've trained in this and have experience with this and are the ones that are supposed to help you with this, they also don't really get it.
Right.
Is very scary. So we cling to the first and simplest is like, I understand it myself. But if we get to the point where like, I can't figure this out, well, okay, they'll understand it. And so people, there's a reason for them to want it to be like that.
But who's the they?
All people, our culture, like talking about psychology being simple. Like the way that we casually do psychoanalysis of other people, you're narcissistic, you're anxious, whatever, like as though, but again, if you ask somebody like, what do you mean by that? They're going to have a hard time answering that question other than just to mean like what you just did is something that I didn't like. And I think you did it because you like it and you don't care that I don't like it.
Right.
That's what I mean by narcissistic. Your level 100 classes taught you listening techniques like reactive listening. What did level 400 classes teach you? That's not really how it works. I mean, we do learn things like active listening.
We said re-elective.
I know.
I think it's reactive. Okay.
I think that's an autocorrect. It says re-elective listening, but I think that's reactive. active listening, minimal encouragers, open-ended versus closed questions, stuff like that. But nothing there is like if you read Forbes, you'll get like articles
Right.
that tell you about these things. This is the one.
Reflective. Wasn't reactive.
Reflective. Yeah, reflecting, both emotional, reflecting,
Paraphrasing.
summarizing, paraphrasing, and you have to learn all the different whatever. But it's useful. I don't think that's a bad thing. Like I'm always talking about, having language to apply to a concept helps you to perceive it and understand it and be able to interact with it. But it's not the same thing as like, now you know when to use it and how and whatever.
Right.
There's a reason that therapists are required to do an internship. We don't generally use it the way that it is intended to be used, but it's intended to be like on the job training, like any apprenticeship. We don't, when someone's training to be a plumber, we don't be like, go to classes, now you're a plumber.
Right.
Like, you got to go out and work with somebody who does it and learn on the job a lot.
But what did you learn about listening in the last year of advanced studies?
We didn't really.
Yeah, no.
They don't really teach. There's not really anything. This isn't a knock on therapy training. It's just the nature of academic learning and academic environments. There are things you can teach in that situation, and there are things that you can't really. Like, you can't teach a person how to shoot a better free throw. You can teach them the principles of it, but they still have to go and practice it. So there aren't like advanced listening techniques.
No.
I mean, I would say that there are, but it's not something that you can really teach in an academic environment.
I feel like a lot of, if I had to put anything to like the listening in my advanced years, probably when I first started working here.
Right.
But again, like practicing really listening, like with my clients or with you or other people here. But I think it just happens also with time.
Yeah. And there are things we can teach didactically about that. Generally, I sum that up for people in that, like, the three important elements of listening that people don't think of as being about listening is talking, listening to yourself talk, and listening to what they're not saying.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those are things I can teach didactically, even though that way of phrasing it isn't like what exactly does that mean? We just don't have the time to get into the details. I get it. I'm doing master's work now. Beyond.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, just the way we're talking to you right now and to each other, this is that annoying level of communication. There's a reason that there's not a million people here being like, this is super entertaining. You don't jump in on like streamers who are having in-depth, detailed conversations about, what is the nature of listening or whatever. Not because it's not useful, but it's like jargon. Jargon is useful, but it's niche. It really only is helpful to be able to determine, like, if I am an astronaut and someone's asking about what I did on the last whatever, I'm not gonna be like, well, I loosened the RC178B bolt. Like, you don't know what that means,
right.
And I know you don't know what that means. So I'm gonna say it in a way that makes sense to you based on the context.
Yeah.
And yeah, we don't need to do, like, sometimes we talk about it in that term, but rarely am I ever talking about, like, when we're talking about cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever. And even the small extent to which we do that here is still like only interesting and applicable in a very like niche setting.
Right.
So if you're focused on that, or if that stuff matters to you, then it's really useful to be able to utilize this way of thinking and this language. For everybody else, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, we gotta wrap up in a minute, but there's an interview with Ethan Hawke.
I love Ethan Hawke.
Which I haven't seen the interview, but this quote has been shared with me, or this one part of it. And I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember exactly. But he's like, art doesn't matter for the most part, right? Like, you go through your life and it doesn't matter that you haven't read War and Peace or that you haven't seen La Boheme or whatever. But then something happens and you're in this spot where you're feeling a certain way or you're thinking about a certain kind of thing. And then you read the book or then you see the show, and then it is life-changing. Then it's like, I'm not alone in this. Somebody else has seen this. Someone else has experienced this. I can feel connected to other humans again and like have some hope. That the point of art is not that it is relevant to each person all the time. It's not. The point is that it's there so that when it is relevant, you have access to it.
Absolutely.
And that's the same thing as therapy or calling a technician or going to a mechanic or anything else. It's like, it doesn't matter in most people's lives, most of the time, it does not matter at all.
Or
But when the time comes that it matters,
Right.
it can be all the difference, and then it's important that it's
Right.
there.
Just want to say something real quick. Just real quick about how, just with that, like, there are things you've said or other people have said to me over the years, countless times, whether it's theories or a metaphor, an example, and it doesn't do anything. And then I'll hear it 3 years later on a random Tuesday, and I'm like, okay, it makes sense now. Just because, and you're like, I've said this to you over the course of years, but now it's applicable.
We repeat stuff all the time. One of my favorite experiences, and it happens not infrequently, is that like I'm thinking about something or working through something, and then I come to some conclusion. I'm like, this is so obvious and so important. Why didn't anybody try and say it? And then I'm like, oh, actually, there's like a dozen common sayings that like I never interpreted in this way.
Right.
And maybe other people did, maybe other people didn't, but like it does apply. So, you know, maybe this thing I'm realizing, a bunch of people have realized it and tried to share that with everyone else. And then it kind of just gets turned into this thing that I hear and I'm like, sure.
Right.
You know, break it down into small chunks. Like, sure, whatever. But if I talk about it in different language about operationalization, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, so what I need to do is break it down into small chunks.
Right.
And you don't think about it that way. But all I care about is the paycheck. I don't care if I'm on camera or not. Is that an Ethan Hawke quote, maybe?
I don't know.
Anyway, we got to wrap up.
This video.
It's good to be with you, Margaret. It's good to be with you
too.
all at home. Thanks, Coach Fritz and Baston Cider. Always wonderful to have you participating in the chat. We will be here same time next week.
Yes, we will. Thanks for having us.
Bye.
I feel like that was a talk show. Anyways.